Shavua Tov. We are continuing with the Path of the Just, Mesilas Yesharim. And in the Art Scroll edition, we're on page 344, which is chapter 19. And we're learning about the different elements of Chasidus. Chasidus doesn't refer, or Chassid doesn't refer to the Chasidim we see around today, although Chasidim that we see around today could be Chasidim. The Chasidim we're talking about here, or Chasidus, is being extremely pious in one's deeds. Right, the Chasidim today, they're just a subset that follow a certain Rebbe, but obviously they can also be pious, and most of them are. But we're going to be talking about the trait of Chasidus. That's something every Jew can aspire to. So we mentioned that Chasidus is being extremely careful in all of our deeds to fulfill them to the utmost. And we gave examples about how one could be a chassid when it comes to mitzvahs between us and Hashem, how a person can be a chassid when it comes to mitzvahs between man and his fellow. And the idea is that a person wants to fulfill the mitzvahs and do everything he can to fulfill every aspect of the mitzvah, every minute detail of God's commandment. We talked about how the example of the lulav, that shaking the lulav really isn't the main part of the mitzvah, but even that part of the mitzvah, which is not the main idea, still helps protect a person. And now the Ramchal is going to give examples of Chasidim and Chasidus. Okay, page 344 in the Art Scroll edition. Ve'ata avilecha rayos al kol hadvarim ha'ele min ha'chachamim zichron livracha. Now I will bring proofs to you from all the words of the sages. Afal pisha dvarim pshutim ve'ein tzrichim lechizuk raya. Even though these ideas are very simple and they really don't need any proofs. But Perik b'nei ha'ir, Amr, the Gemara Megillah says, Shalu talmidav es Rabbi Zakkai. These students asked Rabbi Zakkai, "B'meharach yamim, with what did you merit long life?" Amr lahem, he answered them, "Miyamai lo hishtanti b'soch arba amos shel tefillah." During all of my days, I never urinated in a place within 4 cubits of where I davened. Back in the day, they didn't have bathrooms, so even though a person could, so people would go to the bathroom outside. But nevertheless, even though you can't daven next to urine, if the urine's gone, it's allowed. But he would go above and beyond and make sure that if it was a place that he ever davened there, he wouldn't urinate there, or any place that was used for prayer. V'lo chinisi shem lechaverei, and I never called my friend with a nickname. We'll soon see why this is important. V'lo vitalti kiddush hayom, and I never neglected to make kiddush on Shabbos. So he means kiddush on the wine, on the grape juice. I had an elderly mother. One time she sold a certain hat that she wore in order that I could have wine to make kiddush. So even though he was very poor, his mother knew that he wanted to make kiddush so much and supported him, and she sold her hat so that he could make kiddush because it was so important. He wanted to fulfill every aspect of the mitzvah. And his mother was obviously the same way, and on board with that. So we see the idea of Chasidus as being extremely careful in all details of the mitzvahs. Really, according to the halacha, Rabbi Zakkai didn't have to make kiddush on wine because he was so poor. And he didn't have. To the point where his mother had to sell her hat, her veil. Because of his attribute of Chasidus, of piety, he did it. And his friend, he wouldn't even call his friend with a nickname that wasn't necessarily a negative nickname. Obviously, it's an actual prohibition. It's very serious transgression to call somebody with a nickname that's making fun of them. But Rabbi Zakkai wouldn't even call his friend with a nickname when it wasn't making fun of him, just a regular nickname, because when you call somebody by their proper name, it shows them respect and honor. So he went above and beyond to honor his friends. Rav Huna Gamkein Kasher Gemi al Levusha. Rav Huna, he had a certain piece of grass that he would use as a belt. Lefisha Machar Hamyono Liknos Yain L'Kiddush Yom, because he sold his belt in order to buy wine for Kiddush. Okay. Osham, it also says there in that Gemara, Shalu Talmido es Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. The students asked Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, but Ma'arach Yamim, what did you merit long life? Amar lahem, he said to them, Miyamai lo asisa kapantri lo beis haKnesses. I never made the Beis HaKnesses, the synagogue, I never took it as a shortcut. V'lo pasati al roshe am kodesh, and I never walked above the heads of the holy people. We'll see what that means in a second. Hine ze Chasidus be'inyan kavod beis hakneses. This is Chasidus when it comes to honoring the synagogue. Ube'inyan kavod abrias, and honoring people. Shelo livso al gav misibasam shelo leiros k'mevazeosam. He wouldn't walk above their heads in order to. He shouldn't denigrate them. This is talking about back in the day, the students in the yeshiva, they would sit on the floor, and Rav Elazar ben Shmuel was a big rabbi, so he was allowed to leave and walk through them, even though they were sitting there, since he was a big rabbi. But he never did it because he didn't want to look like he was walking above their heads and denigrate them in any other way. And walking through a synagogue, obviously, is that a person shouldn't disrespect the synagogue by using it as a shortcut. Od Sham, Shalu Talmidav Rav Preda, the students asked Rav Preda, with what did you merit long life? Amar lahem, he said to them, Miyamai lo kidmani adam lebeis hamedrash. No one ever came before me to shul, to the study hall. I was always the first one in the study hall. V'lo berachti lifnei kohen. I never made a blessing before a kohen, even though technically he could have, since he was a greater Torah scholar than others, he could have led the benching. But he always gave the benching to a kohen. V'lo achalti mebehema shelo humru matnoseh. There's a halacha that back in the times of the temple, certain parts of the animal would go to the Kohen, and really you could start eating from the animal before you gave those gifts, but nevertheless, he went above and beyond and didn't even eat from the animal until he gave the gifts. V'amra od, furthermore it says, Sha'alu talmidav es Rabbi Nechunya. The students asked Rabbi Nechunya, B'meha rachti yamim, what did you merit long life? Amr lahem, he said to them, Miyamai lo nis kabadati b'kilin chaveri. I never got honor in the denigration of my friend. And I never went to bed being upset with somebody. Mefarish Hashem explains there, Ki had Rav Huna, a story with Rav Huna, Dar Mara Kaspe, Ki had Rav Huna, Dar Mara Kaspe, that Rav Huna, he was carrying a spade on his shoulder. Asa Rav Chanabar Chanilai v'kadar minei. Rav Chana bar Chanilai came and saw Rav Huna carrying the spade, and he tried to take it from him, to carry it for him. Amrlei, ira gilsa tedare b'masech dare v'ilo, is yakure ana b'zilusa didach lo nichalei. He says, if this is something that you do in your town, that you go around walking with spades, then you can help me. But if not, it's not something that you do, meaning because you're a rabbi and it's not considered honorable to do this, then please don't help me. I don't need your help. I don't want you to lower yourself to assist me. Now, even though the phrase, the shame of one's fellow, that it says that he never was honored through the shame of one's fellow, so even though that phrase seems to mean hu hamishtada lavazos chavero, somebody who denigrates his friend, in order that he should gain honor, so this isn't talking about a case, obviously, that he wasn't being praised for not denigrating his friend, putting his friend down so it could raise him up. But even in this case where his friend wanted to help him, but since he saw that his friend would, by helping him, it wouldn't be lefi according to his honor, so even that he wouldn't allow his friend to do. So he again went above and beyond. Similar like this says Rabbi Zera. He says, I never got angry in my house. I never walked in front of anyone who was greater than me. I never thought about Torah in dirty places. Right? That might be easy for us, but back in the day, these rabbis were always thinking about Torah 24/7. So, but he was able to stop himself to not think of Torah in dirty places. I never walked 4 amos, 4 cubits, without Torah and without tefillin. And I never slept in the Beis Medrash, not a fixed sleep, not a long sleep, and not a short sleep, because technically, according to the letter of the law, you can have a short sleep in the synagogue, but he never even did that. V'lo sasti b'takalas chaveri. I never rejoiced in something bad that happened to my friend. V'lo karasi lechaveri b'chani chosov. Also, he never called his friend with a nickname. Now, the case they explain of not being happy when something bad happened to his friend, that means even in a case where the friend, let's say, or the misfortune of his friend, let's say his friend was forced to sell his field for a little money because he needed the cash, and he was able to get it at a cheap price. So you might be happy that, oh, I got this field at a cheap price. But even in that case where he didn't do anything wrong to his friend, in fact, he was helping him out by buying the land, he never took joy in that if it was coming through something negative happening to his fellow. The rabbi said furthermore, Amr Rav Yehuda, who is that wants to be a chassid? He should fulfill the words in brachos. The tractate brachos talks about a lot of things, about how one should pray, how one should come close to Hashem. So if a person wants to be a chassid, he should fulfill what it says in tractate brachos. That's when it comes to matters between man and God. And some say, if he wants to be a chassid, he should fulfill the words of Nezikin. Nezikin means the three tractates, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Basra. Those are the tractates of the Talmud that detail how we treat our friend, how we treat our friend's property. So if you want to be a chassid, you have to fulfill what it says there. In fact, that's why in yeshivas they start learning the parak Elu Metzias. Elu Metzias is about returning a lost object, because the first thing we teach kids is that if you find a lost object, it's not finders keepers. The Torah gives us certain rules and regulations about how to return and how to treat other people's objects. So we see here that if a person wants to be a chassid, he has to do things between man and God and between man and man. One needs both. It can't be one or the other. And some say, he should fulfill what it says in Tractate Avos, Pirkei Avos, the famous tractate of ethical sayings from the sages. Because in Tractate Avos it includes all aspects of Chasidus, how to be a chassid in both Ben Adam Lechavero and Ben Adam L'Makom, between man and God and man. Okay, so those were just a few of the examples that the Ramchal brings of certain examples of being a chassid and being a pious person, going above and beyond to fulfill the word of Hashem. And with that, I wish everyone a very happy, healthy week.